On that overcast morning, my body felt like it had turned to stone, firmly anchored in place. My eyelids seemed glued shut by an unseen force, and my legs were ensnared in the warm embrace of my blanket. The incessant, jarring ringtone of my iPhone's alarm clock was the only thing powerful enough to pull me from my deep slumber. Groggily, I managed to extricate myself from the bed, only to be greeted by an unexpected chill that prickled my skin. Even though the apartment was far from cold, the sensation was alarmingly brisk. I shuffled into the kitchen, cocooned in my blanket like a makeshift cloak of comfort. The mere thought of making tea provided a small solace amid the haze of sleep. As the kettle began to whistle and steam rose, I dragged my sluggish body to the bathroom. A cold shower swiftly banished the last vestiges of sleep, jolting me into a more alert state. After a hurried breakfast of tea and sandwiches, the lingering, unsettling chill in the air persisted. Although the thermometer read above freezing, I couldn't shake the feeling that the biting cold might be a figment of my imagination. The day ahead stretched out like a thick, gray cloud, seemingly endless and monotonous. I longed for a change, something to break the predictability of my routine life. My familiar morning routine now felt like a cruel joke. Everything outside was shrouded in grime and sleet, remnants of yesterday's snowfall. Time marched on, ticking relentlessly, a reminder of the inescapable reality. I had to go to work. In my haste, I threw on my clothes and stepped out the door. The path I walked was mundane, a daily pilgrimage through the city's streets, past sleepy children heading to school and a bus perpetually packed with passengers. Yet, this morning held an odd difference. A subtle, nagging unease settled in my stomach as I left the building, as if a small voice was whispering, urging me to stay home. I brushed it aside, overshadowed by the pressures of work and fear of reprimand. The snowy street greeted me with its usual chill as I trudged along. Passers-by cast curious glances, but I barely noticed. Lost in my thoughts, I wondered if something was amiss. Was my appearance off? Did I somehow seem different? Little did I know what awaited me that day. At the hypermarket where I worked as a consultant, the routine was predictably monotonous. I navigated the crowded bus each morning and greeted the familiar blue facade of the hypermarket. The door hissed open as I exited, and as usual, I entered through the back entrance into the storage room. However, on this particular day, the storage room was anything but familiar. Its layout had undergone a bizarre transformation. Gone were the scattered boards, pipes, and shelves. Instead, the walls were covered in alarming yellow wallpaper, and a nauseating stench filled the air. It felt like stepping into a neglected basement, a stark contrast to the disorganized yet familiar chaos of the warehouse. Confusion overtook me. This was not the storage room I knew. I approached the doorway leading to the main trading floor, only to find it vanished. Before me stretched long, dimly lit corridors, and the door I had entered through was nowhere to be seen. Panic began to creep in. I tried to convince myself it was a prank or a dream, but the pungent odor and unsettling surroundings told me otherwise. Desperately, I wandered through the labyrinth of yellowing walls and damp carpets. The flickering fluorescent lights overhead cast eerie shadows, creating a disquieting atmosphere. Each step seemed to reverberate through the endless corridors. My heart raced, and my mind swirled with questions. How had I ended up in this disorienting nightmare? Hours slipped by, and my attempts to find an exit proved fruitless. Each room mirrored the last, an endless expanse of wet carpets and peeling wallpaper. I marked rooms with a pen from my notebook, but the layout seemed to shift, creating a bewildering maze. Hope dwindled as I staggered through the corridors, exhaustion and fear taking their toll. I found a brief respite in a small, less musty room. My thoughts became disjointed as the reality of my situation set in. The flickering lights created an uneasy rhythm, and the sounds of dripping water and distant echoes kept me on edge. The exhaustion nearly overwhelmed me, and I collapsed onto the carpeted floor, succumbing to restless sleep. My dreams were fragmented, filled with images of the storage room, distorted hallways, and an ever-present sense of dread. When I awoke, the incessant flickering of the lights had become an unbearable nuisance, accompanied by the sounds of shuffling footsteps and distant laughter echoing from beyond the room. My desperation grew as I realized the true nature of this place, a nightmarish anomaly inhabited by malevolent entities. The ominous presence of an unknown creature lurked in the shadows. As I ventured further, I encountered increasingly grotesque and unsettling sights. The fluorescent lights overhead continued to flicker, casting ominous shadows. Occasionally, I glimpsed dark silhouettes moving in the distance, figures that seemed to watch me with malevolent intent. My dread escalated when I encountered a horrifying figure in one of the rooms. It was a twisted, humanoid entity with a grotesque, malevolent grin and glowing eyes that pierced through the darkness. Its body creaked and groaned with each movement, filling me with an overwhelming sense of terror. I fled from the room, the creature's eerie grin haunting my every step. I stumbled through the labyrinthine corridors, my energy waning. Seeking refuge in a dimly lit room, I hoped for a brief respite from the malevolent forces lurking in the shadows. In the safety of that room, I clung to the fragile hope of survival. However, the sounds outside grew louder, the relentless footsteps, the ghastly laughter, and the unsettling presence of unseen entities continued to torment me. The sense of hopelessness settled in as I faced the grim reality of this place, a never-ending nightmare where escape seemed impossible. Huddled in the dimly lit room, my only solace came in fleeting moments of darkness between the flickering lights. I yearned for a way out, but each time I ventured into the maze, the labyrinth shifted, and the malevolent entities seemed to close in. The Backrooms had transformed into a twisted, inescapable reality, and my desperate struggle for survival continued amidst the unrelenting horror. A faint ray of light flickered weakly in the dimly lit bedroom that evening, barely managing to push back the encroaching darkness. The silence that enveloped the room was almost tangible, pressing in on Jocelyn from all sides. Occasionally, a soft whisper of a breeze drifted through an open window, causing the delicate white lace curtains to flutter like spectral figures caught in a slow, ghostly dance. Moonlight seeped through, casting a deceptive veneer of peace over the room's furnishings, yet the atmosphere was fraught with an underlying sense of dread. Jocelyn had grown accustomed to leaving a light on before she went to sleep, a ritual born from her battle with persistent insomnia. She hoped that the faint glow would somehow fend off the darkness that plagued her mind. But that night, the stillness of the room was abruptly pierced by an unsettling whisper that sliced through the silence. "We are coming for you." At first, the whisper seemed almost unreal, a barely perceptible murmur that could easily be dismissed as a trick of her imagination. However, it soon escalated, growing louder and more insistent until it became a thunderous roar reverberating in her ears. "We are coming for you." The intensity of the sound was almost unbearable. Jolted awake, Jocelyn was engulfed by a strange, pulsating energy that seemed to vibrate through the very air of the room. The ringing in her ears, once a distant hum, had swelled into a deafening crescendo. The noise resembled the static of multiple televisions stacked haphazardly, their screens churning with chaotic, black and white interference. Goosebumps prickled her skin, not from the chill of the room, but from an instinctive alarm that warned her she was not alone and might need to flee at any moment. This state of semi-consciousness was maddening. Every detail around her was captured with an unsettling clarity, amplifying her fear. The whispers sometimes transformed into voices with an otherworldly resonance, as if tuned to a frequency beyond her comprehension. Familiar voices, those of colleagues or even her parents, drifted in and out, their tones distorted, as though she were eavesdropping on conversations from another realm. Meanwhile, the unknown voices seemed acutely aware of her presence, deliberately planting seeds of dread in her mind. The whispers coalesced into mocking laughter, a sinister promise of doom. The ominous phrase, "We are coming to get you," became an ever-present harbinger of fear, its menace growing more imminent with each passing night. Despite the pervasive dread, tonight felt different, more intense. The unmistakable sound of dragging footsteps echoed up the stairs, accompanied by the clinking of something heavy. The noise halted abruptly outside her door. A chill of terror coursed through Jocelyn, and a paralyzing dread set in. Her mind screamed, "Go away," but her body remained frozen, immobilized by fear. The room's false tranquility had dissolved into an oppressive darkness, marked by shifting, distorted shadows that flickered ominously on the walls. Jocelyn was trapped in a state of terror, unable to move or make a sound. Her fear was all-consuming, leaving her drenched in sweat, each drop a cold bead tracing a path down her spine. She was powerless to resist the encroaching horror, caught in the liminal space between sleep and waking. The shadows of previous nights had been unsettling, but tonight was different. The shadows had taken on a new, more terrifying form. Disfigured faces, twisted limbs, and a sensation of being smothered by an unseen weight had been recurring themes. Tonight, however, the creature that emerged was unlike anything she had encountered before. Its arrival was preceded by ominous warnings and disturbing dreams, hinting at a more malevolent presence. A dark figure materialized in the doorway, its long, bony fingers clawing at the frame, leaving deep, jagged scratches in the wood. The creature moved with grotesque, erratic motions, its body twisting and contorting in unnatural ways. It crawled toward her bed, its claws scraping and dragging along the wooden floor. The sight was both horrifying and mesmerizing, compelling Jocelyn's terrified gaze. The presence of the creature beneath her bed was palpable. Its irregular breathing and deep, guttural growls resembled those of a rabid beast poised to pounce. Jocelyn's fear intensified as she felt the creature's weight shift on her bed, its claws making their way up her legs, leaving a trail of burning pain. As the creature began to emerge from under the blankets, Jocelyn's panic surged. The blanket was pulled back slightly, revealing the creature's grotesque face just inches from hers. Its menacing grin and glowing yellow eyes seemed to mock her, savoring her fear. The weight of the creature pressed down on her chest, its claws tightening around her throat, piercing her skin with a cruel intensity. Desperation gripped Jocelyn as she frantically searched for any sign of escape. The sound of banging on walls and windows grew louder, amplifying her sense of impending doom. The pressure on her throat intensified, and she could only manage a weak, gurgling sound. The creature's pleasure in her suffering was palpable, as if it thrived on her terror. The agony of suffocation set in, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Her vision blurred, stars and flashes of light dancing before her eyes. The final moments were a chaotic blur of fear and resignation as the darkness enveloped her completely. In the void, Jocelyn's consciousness lingered. The darkness was absolute, a cold, empty expanse devoid of color. Fog swirled around her as a crowd of indistinct, shadowy figures gathered. They watched her with sinister, gleaming eyes, their smiles twisted and malevolent. The connection to these shadows was unsettling, as if she were part of something far more sinister and beyond her understanding. Suddenly, a bright light pierced through the fog, a glaring contrast to the surrounding darkness. The light expanded, and despite her fear, Jocelyn stepped toward it, her eyes slowly adjusting to the brightness. As the light receded, she found herself in a different room. The familiar shadows now encircled a bed. The bed was occupied by a young man, lying still and paralyzed. Jocelyn felt a profound, unsettling connection to him, a shared understanding of his plight. The scene was hauntingly familiar, a mirror of her own nightmares. The realization that her fears were being played out in another's reality filled her with overwhelming dread. The circle of shadows continued to watch as Jocelyn stood silently by the bed, linked to the young man's fate. The nightmarish cycle of fear and suffering seemed endless, a grim reminder of the Dark Assailant's relentless pursuit. The air was heavy with anticipation, and the faint musty aroma of old books lingered as the girls huddled together in the dimly lit common room of the old convent. Shadows flickered across the walls, cast by the feeble glow of a single, weary bulb hanging from the ceiling. The room buzzed with muffled giggles and hushed whispers, a mix of youthful bravado and underlying trepidation. Anania's heart raced, not just from the cold that seemed to seep through the walls, but from the mounting pressure of her friend's challenge. The dare itself seemed straightforward, but the haunted history of the place added an ominous weight. The convent was steeped in legends of ghostly sightings, eerie apparitions, and unexplained noises. Anania's friends were well aware of her deep-seated fears, and their mischievous glances and barely concealed smirks made her feel like a lamb being led to the slaughter. Clarifying the challenge. "All right, let me make sure I've got this right," Anania said, rising from her seat with a slight tremor in her voice despite her attempt at enthusiasm. "I need to leave through this door." She pointed to the creaky wooden exit leading into the shadowy hallway, then turn left at the stairs, walk down the corridor, and come back through the door on the other side. She indicated the door opposite. "Is that correct?" The room erupted in a chorus of excited affirmations. Yes, they cheered in unison, their faces illuminated with a blend of anticipation and mischief. Anania's heart pounded as she absorbed the scene around her. The old wall clock ticked relentlessly, its hands creeping towards 2 a.m., the so-called witching hour. Why hadn't she gone to bed earlier? The late hour only amplified her growing unease. The girls, now nestled in their beds with blankets pulled snugly around them, watched with a mix of glee and anxiety. Some had their eyes wide open, unable to tear themselves away from the unfolding spectacle. The idea of Anania venturing out alone into the pitch-black corridor, guided only by the dim light from the staircase, was both thrilling and unsettling. Venturing into the unknown. The heavy door creaked open, and Anania stepped cautiously into the corridor. The dim, flickering light from the staircase cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to twist and writhe in the darkness, giving the hallway an almost malevolent air. Anania's silhouette, slender and elongated, barely discernible against the engulfing blackness. She had taken only a few steps when she abruptly halted. Her figure stood motionless, stark against the looming darkness ahead. The girls in the room exchanged nervous glances, their laughter stifled as anxiety took hold. "Why isn't Anania moving?" one girl whispered, her voice trembling. "Maybe she saw something," another speculated, her eyes wide with concern. A hesitant voice called out, "Hey, Anania. Are you all right?" But the silhouette remained unmoved, a dark and foreboding presence in the shadowy corridor. "Was this a bad idea?" one girl murmured, regret seeping into her tone. "I think so," another agreed, her voice tinged with apprehension. "We shouldn't have asked her to do this." "Kanika, you should go check on her," someone suggested, desperation creeping into their voice. "Why me?" Kanika retorted. "You're the one who came up with the dare." "Schluter, let's go together," another girl urged, her face pale and eyes darting nervously. Schluter, however, declined, her hands trembling as she shook her head. The unexpected return. The room fell into a heavy silence, punctuated only by their ragged breaths and the occasional creak of the old building settling around them. After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open once more, and Nadia reappeared, her face flushed with a mix of relief and bewilderment. "Guys! I did it," she announced triumphantly. But their cheers of victory quickly turned into screams of horror as the girls turned their gaze back to the corridor. The menacing silhouette that had loomed ominously in the darkness was gone. The corridor now appeared as just an empty, shadow-filled void. The girls leapt to their feet, their faces drained of color and their eyes wide with terror. The gravity of their situation dawned on them fully. "What's wrong?" Nadia asked, her confusion growing as she saw the fear etched on her friends' faces. "What happened?" The girls hurried to explain, their voices overlapping as they described the eerie sight of Nadia's unmoving silhouette, how it had seemed to linger unsettlingly even after she had moved. Their descriptions were punctuated with nervous glances and whispered exclamations, their fear palpable. Nadia, though shaken, found the experience baffling. Her heart had raced during the dare, but she had completed it without encountering anything truly frightening. It was strange that the others had seen something so unsettling while she had merely gone about her task. The lingering aftermath. Schluter, visibly shaken, walked over and firmly shut the door. The girls, now huddled together, attempted to settle down for the night, but sleep remained elusive. The image of the shadowy silhouette haunted their thoughts, a persistent reminder of the fear they had stirred up. As the night wore on, the once light-hearted dare transformed into a source of lingering terror. The silhouette had left a deep imprint on their collective psyche, a stark reminder of the fine line between bravery and fear. The convent's haunted whispers seemed to grow louder, their shadows stretching longer in the minds of the girls who had dared to confront them. In the end, the night was filled with restless tossing and turning, as the image of the silhouette at the door refused to fade, leaving behind a chilling reminder of their harrowing adventure. The unexpected shift. My transition into night shifts began as a surprising adventure. What seemed like an exciting opportunity quickly turned into a challenging ordeal. As an IT professional, I was enticed by the promise of extra pay and the prospect of working through the night, hoping to escape the constant interruptions of daytime office life. At first, the notion of uninterrupted hours in the serene quiet of the office appeared ideal. I envisioned a peaceful work environment where I could focus without the usual daytime disturbances. However, this seemingly perfect setup soon began to disrupt my sleep patterns in ways I hadn't anticipated. Initially, I managed the unconventional hours and even found some solace in the office's stillness. But this tranquility was short-lived. The financial request. One evening, a colleague approached me with an urgent request. He was experiencing financial difficulties and sought my assistance. Eager to help, I agreed, even though it meant disrupting my routine and sacrificing some of my personal time. What I didn't foresee was that this act of kindness would trigger a series of events that would severely affect my sleep. As days turned into nights and nights into days, I began to notice a drastic shift in my sleep patterns. What used to be a deep, restorative rest was now marred by constant interruptions. Restless nights followed, with difficulty falling and staying asleep. Unbeknownst to me, my life was on the verge of a profound and unsettling transformation. The night that changed everything. One fateful night, exhaustion overcame me. I collapsed into bed, hoping for a peaceful sleep. Instead, what followed was anything but restful. In the middle of the night, I was jolted awake by an inexplicable sense of dread. My eyes flew open, and I felt an unsettling presence looming beside my bed, to my left. My body felt immobilized, as if frozen in place. Fear surged through me, and I could sense a cold, heavy breath nearby. In a panic, I jumped out of bed, stumbling toward the light switch by the door. I flicked the switch, but the room remained engulfed in darkness. My terror escalated as I glanced back. The haunting presence. To my horror, I saw my own body lying motionless on the bed. Shocked and disoriented, I struggled to grasp the scene before me. My heart pounded, and a sinister presence seemed to draw closer, its breath growing more intense. Trapped within my own body, unable to move or cry out, a mounting sense of dread overwhelmed me. The clock on my bedside table ticked relentlessly, each second echoing louder in the silence. I was acutely aware of my surroundings, caught between reality and a nightmarish existence. The room seemed to darken, enveloping me in a suffocating void. Every frightening movie scene I had ever seen flashed through my mind. Was this the afterlife? Had I somehow descended into hell? The awakening. Just as I reached the edge of endurance, I was abruptly jolted back to full consciousness. The lights were on, and I quickly scanned the room. To my immense relief, there was no sign of the malevolent presence. The room, including my dark cupboard, was silent and unchanged. Despite the lack of any physical evidence, the terror lingered. My body trembled uncontrollably, and the thought of sleep seemed impossible. The nightmare had left me deeply shaken, unable to return to the comfort of my bed. I lay there, wide awake, haunted by the memory of the shadowy presence that had tormented me. The legend of the haunted bridge of Kesali is more than just a local myth. It's a chilling chronicle of a tragic past that continues to cast a shadow over the present. This spine-tingling tale, recounted by a friend who witnessed an inexplicable event, reveals the eerie happenings connected to a family member plagued by malevolent spirits. Join us as we delve into this unsettling experience. The village of Kesali. Nestled in the serene landscapes of Madhya Pradesh, Kesali is a village known for its peaceful ambiance and close-knit community. During one of the village's grand celebrations, a vibrant wedding, Puneet, who had moved away to the bustling city years ago, returned to reconnect with his roots. The wedding was a dazzling spectacle of tradition, with vibrant colors, joyful music, and the heartwarming chaos that defines Indian celebrations. The air was thick with the aroma of spicy delicacies and the lively rhythms of traditional tunes. The villagers, adept at reveling in such grand events, indulged in endless servings of sweets and savory dishes. Despite the festive atmosphere, Puneet found solace in reconnecting with his family. Seeing his relatives gathered under one roof was a comforting reminder of his heritage and the connections that bind him to his past. The bridge incident. As the wedding festivities began to wind down, Puneet, along with his uncle and aunt, prepared to head home. The journey was grueling, with the scorching sun and rough roads adding to their exhaustion. In need of a break, they decided to stop at the infamous bridge of Kesali, a location notorious for its ominous reputation. While they rested, Puneet's uncle received a troubling call from Puneet's father, who expressed urgent concern about their proximity to the bridge. His voice, filled with fear, urged them to leave immediately. Despite the warning, Puneet's uncle reassured him that they would be leaving soon. Puneet, feeling uneasy and uncertain, remained silent as the conversation unfolded. The disturbing turn. Upon returning home, the initial calm was soon shattered by disturbing events. Puneet's aunt, usually vibrant and engaged, withdrew to a corner, absorbed in prayer. Hours passed, and her incessant chanting of mantras grew increasingly unsettling. Her once soothing murmurs now carried a tone of distress. When questioned, Puneet's aunt revealed with trembling lips, "When I chant, the voices don't bother me." Her cryptic words sent a shiver through the family. They immediately sought assistance, reaching out to a local priest known for his expertise in dealing with spiritual disturbances. The exorcism. The priest arrived and began his ritualistic procedures to uncover the source of Puneet's aunt's torment. She described hearing unsettling whispers and agonizing cries that pierced her mind whenever she stopped chanting. These voices seemed to convey deep suffering and desperate pleas. Well versed in Kesali's supernatural occurrences, the priest conducted a series of rituals aimed at driving away the malevolent entities. The room filled with the sound of ancient chants and the aroma of incense as he worked to cleanse Puneet's aunt from the unseen forces. The dark history of the bridge. After the exorcism, the priest revealed the dark history of the bridge. Many years ago, a tragic accident occurred when a bus carrying passengers plunged into the river below. The accident claimed the lives of numerous individuals, men, women, and children. The merciless currents of the river engulfed the bus and its passengers, leaving behind a trail of grief and unrest. The souls of those who perished in the accident were believed to linger around the bridge, their spirits restless and seeking solace. The bridge had become a hotspot for supernatural activity, with locals frequently reporting eerie encounters and ghostly apparitions. It was thought that these tormented souls, unable to find peace, manifested their anguish through disturbing interactions with the living. Conclusion. When Puneet's aunt emerged from her ordeal, she retained no memory of the events following their stop at the bridge. Her strange behavior and the unsettling voices remained a haunting enigma. The tale of the haunted bridge of Kesali serves as a chilling reminder of how tragedies leave a lasting imprint on the world, long after their physical remnants have faded. It stands as a testament to the spectral legacies that intertwine the past with the present in eerie and inexplicable ways.